Emotional literacy. Here we go, everybody. We're going to take on feelings. We're going to connect students to the universe of feelings. We're going to challenge students to identify feelings in others, investigate the role of feelings in decision making and action. Sometimes you want to follow your feelings, sometimes it's not such a great idea, right? And then use feelings to improve dialogue. If you say how you feel first, that does improve dialogue, and we'll teach students how to do that. We're going to start with lesson 1 in the book. It's lesson 17, Connecting to Feelings, part 1. Start the opening question, the best exercise called Notice Your Feeling for starting a whole curriculum on feelings. Feeling charades are really, really fun, and then talking about feeling scenarios. All right, opening question. What feelings have you had so far today? And make sure you emphasize it's okay to say nothing, because the identification of indifference or feeling nothing is actually feeling something, and that concept will allow students to be comfortable saying nothing because they're going to get to something very, very soon. In fact, in the next activity. Noticing your feelings. You're going to start with any small item you can put in a student's palm. I usually use Skittles for this because it's easy to put one Skittle into each student's palm, but some people use different things, and some people don't like using candy. I use Skittles. Anyway, and then have a paper and pen for students to make sure that they can write down what they're feeling. All right, first exercise. Tell students this exercise trains us to notice our feelings. And they'll sort of look around and think, okay, feelings. All right. And now to the class, everyone is going to receive a gift. Already you see people's eyebrows lift up and say, what's going on? In that moment, tell students to write down whatever they feel at the moment they hear this announcement. Give some examples. You might feel excitement. You might be surprised. You might be indifferent. You might be nervous. Well, what kind of gift? All of this sorts of builds the intrigue and the kaleidoscope of feelings they might be feeling, and all of it is welcomed. Then tell students that to get the gift, they will have to put their elbows on their thigh, it doesn't have to be exactly like that, and hold their palms out, and you'll want to demonstrate that. And after doing that, and this is the picture of when you actually put something in the palm with the eyes closed. We'll get to that in a moment. And ask them, okay, how do you feel? And then write their feelings down. So you first write their feeling down of how do they feel receiving the gift, and now how do you feel about the fact that you're going to have to hold your palm like this to get the gift. Some students might have the same feeling, and you can say sometimes it's changed. Either way is fine. Now, tell them to close their eyes and say, you will now receive your gift, but you have to keep your eyes closed when you receive your gift. And how do you feel? Have them write it down. Of course, they have to open their eyes to write it down, or you have them write it down and then they close their eyes. Now, closing their eyes, they're going to feel a little bit of caution. You might say you might be scared, or you might be confident and excited. Just throw out as many examples as possible so they know everything is welcome. Okay, and then tell them for the next few feelings, well, since their eyes are closed, they don't have to write down, but to think about what feelings they'll be having in that moment. Okay, once tell everybody to close their eyes, and once every student has their eyes closed, ask them to notice, what are you feeling? So there's this awkward pause. At this point, most people are feeling a little bit, some anxiety, some fear. Hey, I don't know about closing my eyes. And then ask students to stay quiet as you walk around. So depending on how many students are in the class, usually I have 30 students. I say it's going to take me about 90 seconds to get around the room. So you're going to have to stay quiet for 90 seconds as I put one item in each student's hand. Again, tell the students to close their hand and notice the texture of the gift while notice what they're feeling. So again, I'm going to say notice, be patient, notice your feeling as I walk around, and then once I put that item in your hand, notice how you feel. You can notice the texture, but you cannot close your hand. So you're just feeling what's the weight of the item in your hand. Tell students to open their hands and eyes and notice how they are feeling. All right. Then, tell the students to close their hands and notice the texture of the gift while notice what they're feeling. And then tell the students to open their hands and eyes and notice how they're feeling. Wow, I have a Skittle. And you can tell them they can eat the Skittle if they want. Most students will say, no, it's sweaty at that point. Have students turn and talk to a neighbor about what they experienced at the different moments, and ask students to complete the feelings list, what they felt at the different points. All right. And at this point, they said, there's a clear reflection. Wow, I felt a whole bunch of, most students will have a range of emotions, and that's the point of this. You're just noticing feelings. The feelings are natural. You can do a second round and change the item. You could also give a list of feelings beforehand, and that is in the download, the PDF download. All right, reflections. I also say, do you feel something at all times? And then this is the key. I say feeling numb, indifferent, or bored is still a feeling. So that's really important for students who don't have access to their feelings. That feeling bored is still, we're going to count that as a feeling. And that's really, really important. So it's a segue for students to feel maybe things they're also feeling as well, in addition to feeling bored. All right, teacher note. At some point in this unit, a student will ask about the difference between feelings and emotions. Not always, but usually. This topic is a huge scholarly pursuit, but the distinction doesn't serve students at this point in their emotion, feeling literacy, so don't worry about it. For now, it's just best to say that they're synonymous, but may require a subtle distinction in the future. All right, so we got our second activity. This one is now to practice. Now that we're aware of feelings, we get to have a fun theater game to practice them out. So you have 80 index cards ahead of time on each card. Make sure there's a feeling right. The setup is the right feeling on each card. If you need a list of feelings, go ahead, look on the internet. And divide the class then into 4 groups and have each group form a circle. So in the middle, so you want to clear some space so that within the circle you can put down 20 cards, place a deck of 20 feeling index cards, each within the center of every circle, and of course you want to have them, the feeling words, face up so that people can see what those words are. And here you see what that might look like. They could be sitting down, they could be standing, it doesn't matter too much about that. I usually have the students stand. Okay, ask for a volunteer to go to the middle of the circle. This volunteer will choose one feeling index card. Then they will make a pose that demonstrates the feeling. When they choose that feeling index card, they can't actually grab the card. They're just going to think of, what's that one feeling I want to demonstrate? And they're going to make a pose without moving. The student here has looks to be resigned of some sort. And everybody else at that point, the students in the circle will then guess which emotion the volunteer is expressing. Those other students will guess by just saying it out loud, popcorn style. Hey, are you feeling scared? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling depressed? And the students also can look down on the index cards to say, hey, which of those 20 emotions is this person choosing? If you don't have the index cards, then, there's over 200, 300 different feelings. Better to keep it down to 20 so it's easier for the students to guess. All right. The volunteer may not speak during their pose, but they will need to indicate whether a guess is correct or not. So somebody gets a surprise, and if it's not surprised, they can just say no, not right, or just shake their head. Each student goes. The volunteer may not speak during the pose, but they need to indicate whether a guess is correct. So if it is correct, they say, yeah, that's it, and then everybody celebrates. Oh, they got the guess, and then each student afterwards goes into the middle circle at least once, so everyone practices being in the middle, acting something out. After 5 minutes, have the groups rotate to a new set of feeling cards. Depending on how much time you have, you can keep having them rotate, and it's kind of fun so they see a different set of feelings to practice with. And this is exposure to feelings. All right, really, really fun game. The kids love this. Generally, the interest, it can be it's usually 15 minutes is the best amount of time, but it could be a little less or more depending on the class. You could also have students add a monologue to their pose, so they could move, but I don't recommend that. But more if they hold the pose and they talk as they're doing it, that could be a fun exercise as well. Afterwards, you ask, what nonverbal cues were you able to detect in order to make a feelings guess? So not only are we connecting to feelings in general, we're also connecting to what other people are feeling, a level of empathy. And when and how is this skill useful in life? So we're beginning to talk about, okay, feelings, not only do we notice it, why is it useful? All right, then finish. If there's time, there's not always time depending on what you do. You can do a feeling scenario. In this, you keep the students in the same group and then tell students that you'll be sharing different scenarios in life. Their task is to share with the group how they would feel in that scenario and why, and announce different scenarios. These are samples. You're unprepared for a test. How do you feel? You wake up in the morning. How do you feel? Your cell phone is missing. How do you? Whoa, scary. How do you feel? You receive a compliment. How do you feel? And you can discuss with the group. Kids will have different feelings, and this time, there's not one answer. Whatever you have is fine, and this is part of kids feeling comfortable with their feelings, and that they don't have to feel a certain way. It's just who you are. You're blamed for something. You hear gossip. You're blamed for something you didn't do. That's sugar for me. You enter a room full of new people. You receive a gift. You give a gift, or it's snowing outside. All right, at the very end of that, you ask, what did you learn about feelings today? And then your homework is just notice your feelings. You might have them track it down by writing it down. You could just say notice it one time in the day. You could say notice it on the hour. And then the next day, check in with them and say, hey, how did it go with noticing your feelings? What feelings did you experience? And the discussion, the journey into feelings has now started. Well done.